Of course, there's a big conversation happening in Alberta about our place in Confederation, what that looks like moving forward, and exploring ways that Alberta can maybe assert itself a little bit more, gain perhaps some more autonomy within Confederation. Well, to that end, there's a really interesting new paper from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, How the West Wins Alberta's Legal Pathway to Greater Power Within Canada. And I think this fits in with a lot of what's being discussed in Alberta right now. Joining us for more is the author of that paper, which you can read, by the way, at macdonald-laurier.ca. Michael Binnion is a member of the Alberta Next Panel, which is going around the province having these conversations. He's CEO at Questerre Energy, Executive Director of the Modern Miracle Network, and Chair of Canada Strong and Free Network. Michael, so great to have you with us here.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be back with you as well, Rob. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, like I say, I mean, this really speaks to a lot of what's being discussed in Alberta right now, and this kind of moment we're at and exploring or maybe trying to change our relationship with the rest of Canada. So how do you see all of this tying together, first of all?
Well, I think I think one thing I've come to realize through my time in Quebec and across the country that Canada is made up of some very distinct cultures, and of course we've all finally now and we accepted, and in fact, I think the Parliament has passed a resolution to say that Quebec is a distinct society and Quebec is a distinct culture, and it has some in terms of our federation, which has been asymmetrical from the beginning, that some provinces have different deals than other provinces. That I think we have accepted to greater or lesser extent the fact that Quebec is distinct and has some distinct constitutional advantages. What I've realized through my time of accepting and understanding, French and Quebec culture is our own, and the prairies also have a distinct culture, and there's no monopoly that Quebec has on distinctness or uniqueness. And what I think is that we are looking to say that we have a country that has a lot of things in common, but we also have our own distinct cultures and want to have some sovereignty because of that.
Mhm. Why do you think this matters, though? And why do you think it's become such an issue, or it's really been thrust to the forefront so much right now?
Well, I do think, and as I discuss in my paper, that there has been, over our constitutional history from 1763, we generally were moving power towards the people being governed. Power moved from London, England, to Ottawa, Canada. And of course, we've also been moving to some extent power from Ottawa to provinces in terms of, the actual creation of Alberta and Saskatchewan in 1905. We just created a new territory with a lot of self-government in northern Canada. But I would say maybe starting with Pierre Elliott Trudeau, there's been a little bit of a counter trend to try to centralize some powers in Ottawa. Trudeau used the reason that this was necessary to create a charter-based constitution. And of course, he was successful in changing the constitution that way. But we've also seen this with Chrétien and Paul Martin, where they were arguing it was needed for healthcare, that we, a national healthcare, that we need to centralize power. And then most recently, Justin Trudeau made the argument we need to centralize power for a national environmental policy and a national sales tax on carbon. So these have reversed the trend that we've had for 200 and some years, where power on an evolutionary slow basis moves towards the people being governed, and we've seen a counter trend in recent decades.
There's kind of the central question, and you speak to it in the piece, as to whether this is given or taken, whether we need to ask Ottawa for autonomy or whether it's there for Alberta to take, to assert itself.
Yeah, I think that I think that's maybe something that sometimes some very fair-minded Albertans think, well, we'll just have a discussion and people will nicely agree to just give us some more power, and
Right.
I don't think that's how it worked. Certainly Canada is not like, France or or Russia or America that had, violent revolutions to become independent. Canada's, that's certainly not been we became independent through this process of responsible government, that as you demonstrate the ability to govern yourself, power moves closer to the people being governed. So I think, but I don't believe that the people in the United Kingdom just gave that to Canada. I think we had to assert ourselves. I think World War I was a pivotal moment for Canada to get more independence. We showed in World War I that we were now a nation that could field a competent army. And I think that was an important demonstration of self-government. And it probably maybe didn't lead directly, but the Statute of Westminster in 1931 was probably in part justified by the fact, why would English law be supreme over Canadian law when Canada has now proved it doesn't need Britain to defend us? We can field our own army.
Right. But I mean, in terms of, is there a need to change the Constitution to address all of this? Or I guess, is there an avenue here for Alberta within the confines of what already exists to assert itself and to sort of take some of that autonomy for itself?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say one of the biggest arguments in my paper is that under the constitutional tradition and unwritten conventions of our Constitution, the key one I'm referring to is responsible government, the ability to govern yourself, that you have to first demonstrate the ability to govern yourself. Britain doesn't give you that Canadian law will be supreme over English law if you still need them to defend yourself because you don't have an army, right? So we have to demonstrate self-government first. And so my message to Albertans is, when we're unhappy with the way the federal government treats us, when we're unhappy that they're trying to take jurisdiction back, or they're trying to centralize powers, or they're trying to legislate in our areas of sovereignty, that the answer is not to complain and protest and be, in some sense, as people in central Canada tell me when I'm down there, you're kind of like whiny teenagers, like you're the richest people in the country. Why do you whine and complain all the time? Like, the answer is to grow up in a constitutional way, prove that we can govern ourselves, much as Quebec has invested in for 2 generations. Quebec didn't ask for independence or even suggest that they would have a referendum on it until they had demonstrated they could govern themselves through managing their own money and pensions, policing themselves, collecting their own taxes, co-managing immigration, co-managing trade. I mean, they have trade offices in many international cities. So they first showed they could govern themselves and then said, hey, we should have a right to have more power. And I think Alberta has to do the same thing for 2 reasons. One is, it's how our constitutions work for 250 years. So it's the legal rule of law way to do it. But the other practical reality is, how do you become independent if you can't manage yourself?
So does that mean, what are the first steps then to that? Does that mean sort of building up those institutions, or starting to see Alberta assert itself in these areas where they could have some jurisdiction?
Yeah, so I'm talking about things we talked about for a long time. I mean, it's do we want an Alberta police force? Do we want to have an Alberta pension plan? Do we want to collect Alberta taxes? Do we want to, as the Constitution says, immigration is Section 95 it's shared jurisdiction. Like both the provinces and the federal government, like taxes, and other shared jurisdiction. So we should assert ourselves in these areas of exclusive and shared jurisdiction, not as a protest or some way of getting back, but more part of that. We're 5 million people here now, and just in Alberta, well over 6 in the prairies, and it's time for us to show that we can govern ourselves. And in so doing, I think a bunch of things happen. One is we're within the rule of law and what our Constitution says about devolution of powers. 2, we improve our bargaining position relative to other provinces and the federal government, and 3, we are proving that we can manage ourselves.
Yeah. And also, where there is a need for negotiation with Ottawa, do you believe that gives Alberta then, or would give Alberta, more leverage?
Yeah, well, the metaphor I use is that when a 14-year-old tells her parents, "I'm really angry with all these rules, and you're making me come home, and that's it. I'm moving out of the house," and the parents go, but you don't have an education, you don't have any money, you don't have a place to live, and you can't pay the rent. I don't really think you're going to move out of the house, right? Well, to some extent, Alberta's saying, we're mad. You're interfering with our jurisdiction. It's not fair. We're going to sue you in court and so on and so forth. And if you don't listen to us, we're going to move out of the country. And they look at us and go, but you don't manage your own money. We have it all. You don't police yourselves. You don't collect your own taxes. Like, how are you going to move out of the house?
So there's an opportunity for Alberta to do these things. It's not a question of waiting for permission then from Ottawa.
Right. And all I'm saying is, because people have talked about this for a while, what I'm saying is that let's not just do it because we're trying to get back at somebody, or we're trying to protest, or we're trying to, like we're just being angry. Like, let's not do it for that reason. Let's do it because it's a natural evolution of the country. It's how the country itself got more autonomy from Britain, is how provinces can have more autonomy from Ottawa. Let's do it as an exercise in maturity and an exercise in responsible self-government.
Is Alberta better off, though, by going that path? I mean, certainly we have prospered. I would argue we probably prospered to a far greater extent than Quebec has, even with everything that Quebec has managed to wrest from Ottawa. But is the end goal here better governance, or what is it we're after, do you think?
Well, I made the point about the Alberta Next Panel because, a lot of people, it's interesting. It was very interesting to be on the panel to see what issues come up and what people are concerned about. But one clear thing that came up was people just so angry with the premier or with the government or with their lives, and a lot of people made the point, why am I against this? It's not because I'm against the idea of us managing our own money. It's because I don't trust you. I don't like you. And one answer I had was, you've got a panel in front of you with the premier and 3 MLAs. And in almost every one of those panels, the local MLAs were in the room. And so it was an actual literal example of responsible government. Your government was there to listen to you. And even if you were angry with them, even if you wanted to tell them how much you didn't trust them, the fact of the matter was they were there in the room with you, and you had the opportunity as a citizen to talk to them directly. You could go to the mic, you could talk to the MLAs at the back. People stayed after the panel to mingle. You had an opportunity to talk to your own government. And that to me was like a proof point. I don't think Mark Carney's going to go around Alberta with some MPs to do that. I don't think he will. And so there's an example of why I think being able to govern ourselves with people who are accessible to Albertans is better, and better governance and more responsible government.
Right. And to that point, I think, and why we've seen the frustration since the federal election is that it feels like Alberta doesn't really have much of a say in who runs things in Ottawa, whereas Albertans have complete say in terms of who runs things in Alberta. So if the Alberta government has more say in these areas, they're more directly accountable to Albertans.
Yep. And I would say the other thing that was interesting about the number, and as I said, it was genuinely interesting to hear from people and to see the passion and sometimes the vehement anger that some people have for whatever's going on either in their life or what their view of politics is. It was very, I don't want to say rewarding, but very interesting to experience that and to want to understand where they're coming from. But I did sort of think you're implicitly saying, and they were always a minority, by the way, like the majority of people that came out of these panels were very supportive, right? But the minority of people, I think it's important to listen to them. And I'm thinking, but implicitly what you're saying is you trust people in central Canada to look after Alberta better than Albertans would. And it doesn't feel logically. I mean, my first mentor in life, when he was talking about business and he was talking about taking care of your business, his metaphor always was, nobody takes care of your children like you do. Yeah. And I'm sort of thinking, why would we let somebody else take care of our children? Like, why would we not want the ability to have, metaphorically and literally our children taking care of people that we have access to and that we can tell them when we're angry?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, based on what you've been seeing and hearing through this whole process and what you've laid out in this paper, does it feel like we're kind of on the cusp here of some change? So what do you make of this moment we're at now?
Yeah, I will tell you, I do feel that as soon as I did at every one of these panels, as soon as I told people, understand that Canada became independent through this process of responsible self-government. that the light went on for a lot of people. Yeah, what Alberta's doing is nothing different or nothing less traditional, nothing less within our constitutional history, traditions, and law than what Canada itself did. We're not irresponsible. We're not irresponsible, angry people just wanting to protest. We're literally following the way this country's worked for over 200 years.
Well, we'll see what comes of the Alberta Next process. Of course, that's soon to be wrapping up. And in the meantime, this paper, it's up at Macdonald-Laurier.ca. Michael, thank you so much for making some time for us here today. Really appreciate the insight on all that.
Anytime, Rob. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Hey, folks, thanks for watching and listening. You can find us at robbreakenridge.ca. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button below and stay connected with The Rob Breakenridge Show.